10 years ago, I was returning home from a road trip with 2 friends. I received a phone call from my parents asking when we would be arriving, and I explained that we were about 25 minutes away. A minute later, we came around a bend. It was a full moon, and we could see the reflection from a lake below us, and other than that, the road was empty. Suddenly, everything went completely dark in the car. No lights from the dash, gauges, or headlights on the road. The music also stopped, and restarted at the beginning of the CD we were playing. There was now a vehicle pulled over by the police about a quarter mile in front of us that hadn't been there a split second before. I assumed I had dozed off for a moment as it was late. I thought it was still quite peculiar though. After about a minute, the driver of our car turned the music all the way down and said, "Did that just happen to anyone else?" The other passenger in the back seat sat forward abruptly and exclaimed, "I thought I just fell asleep." We then realized that the clock in the car was reading an hour later than it just had a minute before. To keep ourselves from freaking out, we decided that the car had a temporary electrical failure and reset the clock to an odd time. Turned off the dash lights, headlights, gauges, and restarted the CD player. When we arrived home 25 minutes later, we were an hour late. I'm missing an hour of my life, and to this day I have no idea how it happened. When I was a teenager, I had 2 intense dreams one night. The first one was about an online friend of mine calling to say she'd broken up with her boyfriend, and I sang a few lines of Seal's "Don't Cry" to her over the phone. The second dream was finding that same friend's dead body floating in her bathtub. I didn't think anything of it until I logged online the next evening, and my friend came online to tell me her boyfriend broke up with her. I immediately asked if I could call her. She said no. I remember thinking that it meant that I could change it. Not long after, my phone rang and it was her calling me. I was completely freaked at this point, but talked to her normally. She was just talking about school and other random things up until I realized I heard a splash in the background. I asked her, "Are you in the tub?" When she said yes, I felt like my heart skipped a beat. I asked her, "What did you do?" She didn't answer right away, but after a very long pause, she told me she'd taken an entire bottle of pills and chased it with mushrooms and vodka. She'd gotten scared waiting for it to hit, so she called me so she'd hear someone's voice. I hung up and called 911. By the time they got there, she was unconscious but alive. Today, she's a mum to a beautiful little girl, and she's okay. I have a sleep tracking app on my phone that has a setting for lucid dreaming. It will start saying, "You're dreaming," repeatedly in a woman's voice with a bit of an echo. I was at work one day when I started hearing the voice randomly every few minutes. I checked my phone, and as soon as the screen turned, I woke up in my bed as the sun was rising. A bit freaked out, I went to take a shower. Then on my way to work, I started to hear the voice again through the radio. When I turned my car off, a bit freaked out again, I again woke up in my bed as the sun was rising. 3 or 4 more times I repeated the process, all at different periods of the day. I didn't trust reality for about a week after that and still refused to use that setting on the app. One time, my wife and I were coming back from a night out. When I opened the door to the house, she was sitting at the computer working, as I usually find her when I get home, nothing unusual. Except she was entering our home with me. I shrugged it off and carried on. We went to bed, and I told her that I saw her sitting at the computer. And she said, deadly serious, that when I opened the door, she saw herself sitting at the computer working. That was the creepiest thing I've ever experienced. The fact that our neighbour's 2-year-old daughter used to point at the TV when it was off and tell us that the person on the screen was making scary faces, and she wanted it to go away, didn't help us getting much sleep that night. Not creepy, but so vivid and distinct that I still think about it years later. I had a subjectively long, involved dream where I was a vendor at a fish market. I remember getting up early, dressing, doing a whole morning routine, getting tea, heading to the docks, buying fish, loading them into a cart and going to get ice. Then I was haggling for ice, buying less fresh fish while I was at it, going to my market stall, setting up and selling fish all day. It was so real. I talked to my friends, smoked nasty cigarettes, haggled customers, ate lunch, had tea, and lived through my day. At the end of the afternoon, I cleaned up, counted my cash, paid the store rent, went home, cooked the fish I hadn't sold mixed with veggies and rice that I'd traded for. I drank more tea, relaxed, then drew a hot bath, soaked and smoked some more cigarettes, then went to bed. The next morning I woke up refreshed, ready to go down to the docks to buy fresh catch. Except I was in my house, next to my wife, my truck parked outside, and it was Saturday. No work. My wife and I were gearing up to go skiing in Oregon with our car already packed. The weird thing is, in that dream, I was single, a smoker, I'm not, fluent Chinese. The kind of fluency that only comes from a lifetime of speaking it. Oh, and I had been Chinese. Just weird. I've never worked in a fish market. I wonder who I was. I wonder what that was.